Hi everyone, welcome to Early Advantage. This is the place where we decode the unwritten rules of workplace through our candid conversations with leaders who have built exceptional careers. Our mission is pretty simple. We want to translate the years of hard-earned experience into practical lessons for professionals, especially in the first few years of their careers. That is the time when fresh out of college, being in a corporate world, being in an organized workplace seems very fuzzy, sometimes lost, sometimes wondering what's happening around you. So this is the place where we understand more about it. I'm your host, Pallavi Chopra, been in human resources for last 19 years and realized that it's very important for us to get that some guidance in the beginning of our careers. And in that view, today I'm hosting Maninder, who has started career like you many years ago as a finance student at Goa Institute of Management. And after that, she moved into corporate world with Kotak Securities and thereafter worked with one of the biggest names in the finance industry. Today, she is a partner at one of the most prestigious consultancies in the world, where she helps organizations reimagine the future of finance. So please join me in welcoming Maninder. Hi, Maninder.
Hello, Pallavi. Thank you for having me. And it's an absolute pleasure to speak to you and to your audience. And I look forward to our conversation.
Same here. Thanks for taking out time. So, Maninder, it's going to be a flashback. So, let's take you there when you just started your career, fresh out of college. And I believe it would have been a campus placement, most likely. So, what was that biggest thing in the corporate life which you realized nobody had prepared you for, especially in the initial few months of starting this journey?
It's an interesting, walk down the memory lane when you think about it, because while you are in college, and in fact, most of your education years, when you're learning these concepts, you of course learning it from the perspective that they would apply in the real world, right? That's the direct inference you take out of it. But when you reach the corporate world, it's very counterintuitive that those concepts, the four P's and the five C's, don't apply as it is, and rightly so, because neither the clients nor the industry nor the firms are all going through the similar phases or the similar macros, micros. All the environments are very nuanced, their scale, their products. So you have to be very, very agile, adaptable. You have to sometimes even come up with new frameworks. Those cookie cutter frameworks don't always apply, and even the approach to solving a problem is not always the same, right? Because it also matters who are you working with. Every leader has their own style of working, so you need to also modulate your style to those leaders' style. Because if you're not talking the same language, sometimes the answer might be correct, but if you don't say the approach or present the approach that resonates with the audience or with your leaders, then you still lose the solution, right? So some of that is not taught while we are in the classrooms, and that's why the few initial years, I call it on the job learning, right? That's, I think, a bit more important than what we learn in classrooms. That is the biggest reflection I think I've had in the early stages of my career. I was very fortunate to have great mentors early on, which helped me go through that initial phase, both from the technical aspects of my job as well as the softer aspects of my job. So I was very fortunate that ways.
Yeah. So rightly said, I think that gap between theory and application is something which comes with time, and definitely sometimes somehow colleges don't prepare us much about it. So very true. You have been in finance. Your career is built around helping leaders making better decisions with numbers. However, what was that first time you realized that maybe the business decisions are not only driven by numbers? So, any such situation which you came across?
Many. And this is both initially at early stages as well as very, very recently also. And I'll share some of my experiences because we all went through some very turbulent macro times also, right? Whether it was the 2008 meltdown or the pandemic that was hit recently, right? These were the times where even the most sophisticated financial models would not be able to give you the right answers in terms of numbers, right? And that's when it really clicks you that while you absolutely need numbers, and before finance, I'm also a statistics and a maths graduate. So I am absolutely, a numbers person. Like I absolutely need to have numbers before making any decision at all. And I recommend the same for my clients as well whenever I go. So and my clients are of the same mindset. I typically work with CFOs. They are all accountants. So numbers is at the heart of the business. So without numbers, we don't exist for sure. That goes without saying. However, like I was saying, I started in 2009 when the 2008 meltdown had just gotten over. So we all realized that the models were not able to pick up those crazy spikes of the macro environment, right? But there are also a lot of factors in the market which are driven by sentiment analysis, and it's very difficult to translate some of that sentiment, the X factor, into your financial models.
Yeah.
So both at the initial part of our careers, whenever we used to take a number to the CFO, we noticed that the leaders had this instinctive value to add on top of the models always. And I've seen that in recent years also, we would take five different scenarios to our clients or to our CFOs with stress tested ranges. And yet they would have an answer which would either be between the two scenarios, right? Not exactly one of the scenarios we have stress tested, but they'll pick something in between that range, and they will have their own intuitive lens to it that it would most like, and of course that comes with expertise, that comes with, like I said, there is an unknown X factor that comes with just the sheer knowledge of how the world works. So
Yeah.
equally important. However, numbers need to direct you towards that decision. Like you still need to know how much you are deviating from that number, and that keeps you grounded. So,
Yeah. No, very rightly said it. I think it's about hitting that sweet spot of having that foundation of facts through numbers and then eventually making those decisions which are having those qualitative inputs in stats language, as we say, right? So, yeah, rightly said. You cannot just say that numbers do not drive decisions. It's numbers are helping you make decisions for sure. So, once again, so yeah, Maninder, you mentioned about the mentors and maybe the managers who would have shaped your career. Maybe there would have been one or two advices which they would have given to you, which didn't make sense then, lesser experience, us being naive. But now it makes sense. What would that be?
so I remember having a similar discussion with my mentee recently and passing on that advice that I got from my mentor. So that tells you how long it has stayed with me, and I'll tell you why it didn't make sense at that time. So when we're starting fresh, of course, we all feel doing good work, going the extra mile, doing all the right things, giving whatever effort is needed will take you there, right? Having all the right skills. But when the first time I was having this conversation with my manager, and she told me that there is no playbook that works for everyone, right? You have to create your own playbook. So, yes, factors like doing good work, going the extra mile, they're all hygiene factors, that you need to have those, the technical skills, the hard work, knowledge, all of it, basics, hygiene, you absolutely need to do that, have that. However, what makes a true differentiation for you in your career path is building your brand, knowing yet that one or two strengths which you can hone in on and which you can invest in and which you need to make sure everybody else knows is your brand and to reach out to you for. People should know if this is the problem, Maninder is the answer. And you start building that from day one. So you sort of have to build your own playbook. And at that time, it was like, are you telling me that good work and good effort is like not enough? It's not the playbook? Like, what? But I think over the years, you do realize how relevant and how realistic that advice was.
Very true. And as you rightly said, I think each one of us has an opportunity to carve our own path in our own ways and put that personal stamp, as Maninder has her own stamp right now. Yeah. A very important piece of us growing is definitely making mistakes, right? And learning from them eventually. So maybe if you can share one mistake, early career mistake, which you made, and that time it would have been quite a disastrous thing to even imagine, but now makes you smile and has taught you something.
Hmm. I'm glad that it was not disastrous, but it was certainly a mistake that I made more than once. I can tell you that. It was not just once. And this comes from the fact where we try to iterate, right? We constantly try to iterate on a certain deliverable before taking it to our seniors or to our clients, right?
Yeah.
At the start of your career, I think one of the biggest things to remember is that people are not expecting perfection from you. They are expecting to understand or to know whether you are approaching it the right way. Are you thinking the right way? Are you structuring it the right way? Right?
Yeah.
So that was one of my biggest learnings and a mistake I used to make. I used to iterate constantly at my end before taking it. So I lost some bit of time to get that early feedback from my client or from my seniors. And I would suggest this to anybody who is, and honestly, I would even advise that now after so many years also, you know, get the early advice. Like, do not endlessly iterate to get the answer to a certain point before going and sharing your approach. It's always better to go get early feedback, share your approach, align expectations, because every leader has a nuanced way of dealing with the problems. And every client has a nuanced way of dealing with the problems. It's always better to align up front. Do not wait for the end point. That was my biggest I think mistake and learning, and I try to change that constantly in my juniors even today.
So you rightly said that in an endeavor to give that end product in the best shape possible, we sometimes lose track of time or do not take the inputs in between so that it is more effective and optimized. So, and that's definitely a learning to share with our early career audience also. What about maybe a defining moment which made you think that I don't need to keep on proving myself in every meeting, and now I belong here? There was that sense of belongingness which was established in the sector or in the industry as such.
So this particular moment for me actually came with a push. It was not very, it was not driven from my side very actively. It actually was external push that
Okay.
made it happen. And this shift happened particularly when I moved from industry into consulting. It was a shift in the way we operate, in the way we engage. Industry is a very, hierarchical, organized. You always have somebody to, cushion you at every stage, at every layer. Consulting, on the other hand, is a lot more individual contributors' roles, right? Even as an associate, when I had just started off in consulting, I was put in front of a very senior client alone. Like I was the only one. I was just an associate, and I that was the push. Like you're the only one representing your firm and representing the topic and representing literally the opinions of the experts in that field. And again, I've been fortunate to have a client who was very, very respectful of my opinions, despite me being just an associate, right? So that time where I realized that, I don't have to hold back my opinions, just assuming that I don't have enough experience.
Mm.
And I think it's also a bit of a cultural shift as well, I feel. And I hate to say this, but I have just at a larger level, I've observed in India, we tend to mix up respect with submission.
Yeah.
Have
True.
putting your opinions respectfully is very different from being submissive just because our seniors in the room. So I have constantly, and especially in the global world, I've mostly worked in my consulting career with the Western and the global clients. Particularly in the global world, they appreciate people speaking up, no matter what level you are at. Like, it does not matter at all. And I learned that during my initial consulting years, and really, really helped me shape up all the way. So I would advise that to everyone. Like, find that gap, whether it's a meeting, or find that gap where you can valuably position your opinion, you know,
Mm.
even if it might be a small piece. And it doesn't have to be like force fitted, but has to be a true value add on. Don't hold yourself back if you have a point to make and you can add value. Absolutely.
Very true. And I think, as you said, I believe it comes from the foundation of being thorough in your job. And that gives you the
Absolutely.
confidence to speak up, irrespective of the seniority in the room or the seasoned professionals around you, or whatever rank you hold in the organization. So that thoroughness is the foundation which you would have built and definitely expressed in a confident manner in your meetings. Thanks for sharing that. We talk about future proofing our careers. When we started maybe 20 years ago, it's very different from what we have today. So, what has been your approach in reinventing yourself without feeling that you have to start over each time?
Hmm. And I say this with utmost pride now. I think one of my biggest strengths have been adaptability. And I am never scared to go out of my comfort zone. So whenever an opportunity has presented that was not exactly where I have been, the space I've been working in, like when digital and AI came in, we had never, like, we were finance professionals, digital and AI were such new concepts. And I'm not even an engineer, so I hadn't even done that as my education. What did help me though was my statistics background, because a lot of the digital and AI work does connect back to that foundation in statistics and maths, to a great extent. That did help me. However, it was that boldness in taking the opportunity, not shying away to get out of your comfort zone, but still knowing where your strengths will play out. So throughout my career, although you will see that there have been shifts from industry to consulting to AI to digital, like there has been a flavor of a lot of different things. There's always been an underlying common thread as well,
Mm-hmm.
which comes from my background, what I studied, what I am good at, my initial experience in the FP&A space that carved all this. That was the brand I built, right? So that common thread stayed always. So I kept moving the variety, but along the common thread. So you still have that foundation with you.
Yeah. And that's absolutely true wherever you go. I think, irrespective of the organization one is part of, it's about shaping yourself as a professional, right? So, yeah, definitely. Adaptability goes a long way. And talking about adaptability, the other aspect which has been consistent in your journey is coming from the consulting lens or consulting profile which you have handled. And it is definitely about expertise and trust. So, what is one habit maybe you have consciously built that helped you build those long-term relationships or authentic relationships in this journey?
Hmm. So, one of the things I'm just thinking, there are a few things, and I'm trying to rank order in my head what has worked the most for building relationships. Is one, being your authentic self, of course, right? Having the imposter syndrome never helps, especially with relationships. You
Yeah.
have to be your authentic self, you have to be true to yourself. And the second piece is, I think, leaving your insecurities aside, and you have to make that conscious choice always, right? You always have, it is a competitive world, there's no doubt about it, right? Out there, like, nobody will deny the competition out there. However, we have to always remember, I'm telling from experience, that with collaboration, the pie grows. So you don't have to fight for the same piece. You can actually have the opportunity to grow the pie with collaboration, right? And it has absolutely worked wonderfully for me. I have had such beautiful relationships across all my firms, and till date, every firm holds a very special place in my heart. I have friends who are still there in with me day to day, from those, like, the biggest circle of friends that I have comes from my professional jobs. So I think that it all comes from the fact that I was never afraid to collaborate with those guys, right? Especially at a peer level where the competition is the most fierce, right? I think if you have your own brand, like I said earlier, there is space for everyone, right? So I think you can safely shed away those insecurities, and I think people reciprocate.
Yeah.
If you are collaborative, they reciprocate as well. Yes.
Yeah. And very beautifully put about building that pie. Uh, and that reminds me of abundance mindset, where you think that is enough for everyone. It's just that you have to bring your own USPs or your own personal brand and keep on having the relationships around it. It's not either or, as people think most of the time. So, as we move forward, and I'll now ask you, make it simpler for you, and ask you one word or one sentence answers for some of the questions I have for you. Yeah. So,
Okay.
first one to begin with is that one career myth you would like to bust.
Hmm. I think one of the biggest myth is that if you are set in one expertise, then you can't shift. You can't change your profile. You can't move from industry to consulting easily, or consulting to industry. Like, that's a big myth. I think with the right efforts, with the right learner's mindset, you can absolutely shift and be successful. So it's a career myth that you can't switch your profiles.
Okay. Uh, which is one book you would recommend each early career professional to read, or podcast, or anything
Hmm.
the rest is motivating?
I think I was really inspired, and I have gone back to this book time and again. I think the Bill Gates biography, right? That's just
Okay.
extremely inspiring. That's one I would definitely recommend everybody read. And then there is another one which has very interesting stories, not just from the business world, but from the life experiences. Swayed, if I remember correctly.
Okay.
That's another one that I'll recommend, because it tells you about making decisions in those last critical moments. Like, sometimes you have to be
Mm.
so quick and available in the moment. Like, the presence of mind is all that matters in those moments. Things like when you have to land a plane in a storm, and you have to make some of those decisions where you don't
Yeah.
have your playbook. I think one of those books, I think, tells you those lessons of about presence of mind, and what happens in those critical moments of making the decisions. when everything is in flux. How do you do that? I think that really was one of the most amazing reads
Yeah.
during my early as and again, these are my favorites always with me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And what about having a coffee meetup with one business leader, living or dead, or any personality which you really find inspiring?
Well, given the finance world, he is absolutely the guru, and I haven't had the opportunity, of course, and I would love to. If I have a chance, Warren Buffett would be that person.
Ah,
I think his approach and his ideologies are just so practical and so it sometimes almost feel a bit crude and harsh,
inspiring.
but then they're really sometimes what you need, right? You need to hear the hard truths from someone who's done it. So yeah, who would be one person,
Cool.
especially coming from the finance side. Yeah.
Thanks, Maninder. And one last one, which is that
Mhm.
one thing you would recommend anyone to pick up on Monday morning and start, which can improve their career over the next 5 years. What would that be? Like one micro habit or anything which you would suggest?
It might sound like everybody's saying the same thing, but I cannot emphasize the importance of planning ahead. Like it just always pays out. And I would even go to the extent of saying Monday is too late. You have to plan Sunday evening. So you need to absolutely have your thoughts structured, your if not the whole week, at least the next few days planned out very cleanly in a structured step-by-step manner. That really goes a long way. Absolutely goes a long way. And in dynamic career like ours, where you are juggling multiple pieces, you're constantly having to shift gears
Yeah.
between one priority to the other. It's planning that helps the most. You have to have that.
Thank you, Maninder. I learned a lot from you
Sure.
today about how to navigate adaptability, being collaborative, building relationships, and having that confidence irrespective of the position you hold in the organization. That's what takes you ahead. So, thank you for sharing your experience and wish you all the best for the career ahead.
Thank you, Pallavi. Thank you. It was absolutely an amazing conversation, and it gave me a lot of time to reflect on my own path. So, thank you for this opportunity, and I hope to see you around.
Yeah, welcome. And with that, we'll call it a wrap. Thanks, everyone. Bye bye.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye bye.